In an evening that saw a couple scary spots from a couple of our favorites, and what I've heard, they're both okay. Plus, we have the seems like the return of the cleaner, which should be a good thing with Kenny Omega basically squashing Sonny Kiss in like 16 seconds. So, what did you think overall of this episode of Dynamite?
I thought that this was a good episode. I think we kind of established last week while we were talking that when I say that something was average for Dynamite, that's still pretty good. If I would say something, oh, that's average, I would say that it's good. I'm constantly entertained by AEW. They always put on, I think, an entertaining show for sure. Sometimes for good, sometimes for okay. But at the worst, I've only seen a few segments from them ever that really made me go, oh, I didn't like that. So I mean, I thought it was an average show. It was good, but a couple highlights. You mentioned the return of the potential cleaner, maybe. I think that's awesome. I really loved. Well, we'll talk about it more, but I really think I loved 3 out of 4 of the tournament matches. One kind of let me down a little bit. But I thought it was a really good show and a very good build up to Full Gear. 100%.
Yeah, this episode also contained probably one of the most divisive segments as well, where they segment where people really, really hated it or really, really loved it. It doesn't seem to be much in the middle. So we'll definitely talk about the elephant in the room of Jericho and MJF having their Broadway musical number, or Rat Pack number, I guess you could say. It was very I don't even know what you want to call it.
Debonair.
Yeah. Singing
It's
in the
very
rainish. Your very half musical, half not musical number. So very interesting night. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. If you are listening to this as a podcast, you can grab this or actually we do this show live over on YouTube. So if you head over there, the link is in the show notes, and you can head over there. Comments, questions, feedback, you can send those to eric@thatswrestling.com. Also, we have a Discord channel as well, so you can come hang out with us there. And is there anything else? Oh, head over to iTunes and give us a review. It really helps us in the search results as well. So with me tonight, I have Caleb Johnson. How's it going, man?
Very well, sir. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good. I'm glad. Overall, would you say that you liked this show this week?
Yes, it was still a thumbs up show. Yeah, I put it as the average, but the average of AEW tends to be higher than the average of other stuff. So average is good when it comes to AEW, though I did watch about 20 hours of New Japan within the past week. So watching 20 hours of the G1 was pretty crazy as well. So going into this, I was pretty burnt out on watching wrestling going into this show as well. And it was actually kind of nice not to have 2 solid hours of just wrestling and actually having some segments. We had some good character building and whatnot. So it was a nice change of pace compared to the solid 20 hours worth of wrestling that I watched from New Japan.
I actually, as I was watching the show, I thought of you a couple times, because I remember during our roundtable discussion we had a couple weeks ago, we were discussing that we feel an area AEW could improve is building their characters, promo packages. And I thought there was a very good mix of wrestling and packages in this show. I really enjoyed, even a little bit too much, I think, at one point. We'll get there. But there were a couple times I think that stuff was kind of inserted and it felt a little weird with the flow of the show, thinking namely of Darby Allin at the end. Mm-hmm. But they definitely did a good job of putting out there, calling out, at one point Taz called out Will Hobbs, like kind of making sure that your guys who are in the mix are in the mix and that they're, kind of receiving some sort of airtime, even if it's not in a match.
Yeah, pretty much coming in and out of every commercial break that was not in the middle of a match was bookended with a segment of some kind going in and out of commercial, which was really nice to see. And actually, there were a couple that had back-to-back video packages, and the segment with Jericho and MJF, that entire between the commercials was all segments. There was no match in that particular quarter hour or whatever. So yeah, solid this time. They actually crammed 6 matches onto the show, which is kind of out of the ordinary, but 2 of them were very short, one of them being very, very, very short. It worked out. The entrance was longer than the match. So I think it worked out this week. What?
I didn't even think about that. That entrance was longer than that match, most likely.
Yep.
Almost
way longer.
Certainly. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So let's start out. So this show, I thought they were actually going to split these up into 2 matches this week, 2 matches next week, and then the quarterfinals the week before Full Gear. But no, they did all 4 of the first round title eliminator tournament matches in this episode. So we actually had all 4 of those first rounds, and we start off the show with Wardlow versus Jungleboy, accompanied by the rest of the Jurassic Express, though they did not come into play in the actual match itself. I thought this was a very good showing from Jungleboy. They gave him a decent amount, and actually it kind of worked out how they were playing this off. Jungleboy, of course, used a lot of his speed and agility to try to get ahead of Wardlow. Wardlow, of course, comes back with his power and whatnot. So very good right out of the bat, where he's just kind of on Wardlow, just kind of clinging to him and doing whatever he can, and then running around. He hit a good dive. First he did a drop kick that sent him to the outside, and then he did a dive to the back of Wardlow, which was a good thing. And then, of course, they come into the ring eventually, and Jungleboy hits his second rope springboard into the ring, swinging DDT that he's been hitting. Though I think he needs to practice it a little more, because he gets caught up on that top rope at least 50% of the time. So he probably,
I hadn't noticed that.
Yeah, he's gotten he's recovered most of them. One of them was a total fail, but he's come a little close on biting it a few times, so you might want to rethink how he positions himself for that particular one.
That's fair. I do like that move, though. I hope that he does work on it, because I think it looks really good. I do like it.
Yeah, he's got a couple signature moves that he does these days. He's got that one. He also does going into the ropes front first, and then turning it into a spinning lariat. He spins out of hitting the ropes and coming back. And does the lariat. So that's another one that he does. Very similar to how Moxley always had the one where he goes between the rings, falls back, and then kind of comes back up. Though he does,
wacky line. I didn't really like when he used to do that. It looked way too over exaggerated.
Well,
I think that the boys looks a lot more natural.
I didn't like when he did it, because he did it in every single match. Now I've only seen it maybe 3 times the entire time AEW's been going on. So he doesn't use it that often. Whereas in WWE, he did it every single match. It was a spot you'd always see. So solid here. Jungleboy then gets basically manhandled by Wardlow, though he does hit a top rope Super Rana first hand, and then follows up with a backstabber, and then a top rope double knee drop for a near fall. But then Wardlow, he rolls outside of the ring, and Jungleboy tries to do his second rope spinning DDT or swinging DDT onto the staging, but Wardlow catches him, and then basically shot puts him over the ropes into the ring. F10 style, Wardlow gets back into the ring, hits another one, and then he gets the 3 count. So Wardlow picks up the win, which is the right move here, but they did give Jungleboy plenty to be proud of. That double knee off the top rope looked like that did not tickle. Luckily, Jungleboy isn't huge, but if he's any bigger, that I don't know. I wouldn't see anybody doing that to anybody else, because you crush them.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought that looked really good. I was kind of like, whoa, when that happened. I really had a big reaction. I liked the move. I think that, so we differ here, because I expected and wanted Jungleboy to win this match, because I think that there are certain people who you can beat and it's fine, right? Like Orange Cassidy, if he loses to Cody next week, I think that's fine. I think he's right now he's in a place where he's all right. In some other companies, like I know total difference here between Jungle Boy and AJ, but AJ Styles is someone who sticks out in my mind always. If he lost every match from here to the end of the year, like he wouldn't lose anything in my mind. For me, Jungle Boy, again, I know there's a difference in, standings in a sense there. But Jungle Boy is someone, if you beat him too much, I'm afraid that he's going to lose a little bit of the draw. He's not going to be quite as over when the fans come back. And I was expecting him to win this match and have a real good one with Adam Page because I think he needs a little shine from time to time. And Jungle Express or Jurassic Express, I don't know. I feel like they're about 50-50. They win some, but they lose some too. And I really wish that they might have given him a win here because I'm afraid that he's going to lose a little something. But to be fair, the commentary put over that Wardlow was on some sort of winning streak from like Dark. And, it turns out I think he was like 9-0 or something like that. That raised my eyebrows. And I realized kind of that they've been building because I don't watch a lot of Dark, unfortunately. I should start watching it more because I know they start to connect a little bit. But now that Wardlow's on this winning streak, hindsight's 2020. Now I kind of think, okay, this is a good, heel versus face matchup for Adam Page to overcome the big man, get into the finals, which is I think where they're going. But my gut instinct when I finished this match was I really wish that Jungle Boy had picked up the win.
Yeah, Wardlow is 7-1 in singles matches, so he's obviously doing solid. And let me just check Jungle Boy here. Jungle Boy in singles matches is 2-3. So he's not doing too bad. But tag record is 10-6. So he's still on the winning ledger on that. And in trios as well, 6-3. So he's on the 50% there. He's actually 66% there and almost 66% on the other one too. So he's doing, I think he's doing fine. Jungle Boy, he's so young. You could destroy him for the next 2 years, and he still has 20 years of a career ahead of him. So I think he's okay. And I think Wardlow is going to be the best choice here because, of course, then next round would then be if Jungle Boy went through, it would be a face versus face, which is going to be difficult to do. Whereas both Colt Cabana, and it wouldn't have mattered if it was Colt Cabana or Hangman Page because they're both basically baby faces, but they're actually more kind of tweeners at the moment because but it would have probably been a very strange dynamic if Jungle Boy had gone through. But what do you think Wardlow's ceiling is? Where do you think we're going with him?
I think so. When you say ceiling, I mean right now I wouldn't put him near any sort of singles belt. That's just me. I think there's potential there. I think I see him and Jungle Boy actually. Kind of part of the reason I like that first round matchup is because I think that they both have potential. And even though I tend to think Jungle Boy, I wouldn't say higher, but I would think first. Like I think that they need to get behind him sooner rather than later. I think that Wardlow also has potential, and I could definitely see him winning gold in AEW, whether it be through tag team, through the TNT champion. I don't know if he's a world champion, not right now, but I mean, who can tell 5 years down the road who is and isn't, world champion material? But I think he's charismatic. I think he's good in the ring for sure, and I think that there is potential. I think he has room to grow. Right now, I think his ceiling is doing what he's doing, putting on some dominant wins, but, eventually being overcome by your valiant babyface to get to, that next ceiling. Because, I mean, if he was in the finals, now he's in a match where you're like, if he wins this, he is the number one contender, right? I don't see him as a potential number one contender. I see him as just a step below that. You know what? Someone that the number one contender is going to beat to get into that position, exactly where they're putting him right now. So I like this for him now, but I think in the future, I do think he has potential to hold gold. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm curious how he goes. He's 32 years old now. He actually hasn't been wrestling that long. He's only been wrestling for about 5 years now at 32, so he didn't start until he was 27, but he does have a jiu-jitsu background and boxing background, so jiu-jitsu is definitely going to come into play. I've only seen a little bit of his personality over on BTE, so I'm curious what kind of skills he has as far as character work that he can do as well. Right now, he's just been the underling of MJF, but I mean, we might be seeing a callback to a guy like Dave Bautista, who started really late. He came in as Devon Dudley's usher and had no character, and he built over
Deacon
time.
Batista?
Yeah, Deacon Batista. So I mean, we could be looking at a guy like that because his personality over on BTE, I could see him as being a babyface at some point when he comes out of MJF's shadow. So I think we could be seeing that kind of moment when he gets a little bit later in his 30s in his career, really. That we might be seeing a big star breakout here if his personality that I've seen on BTE kind of can come through on the TV of Dynamite at some point in the future.
Right. I totally agree with all of that, but I would think that for right now, for what he's doing, I don't think the muscle or the heater in many groups or tag teams really needs a ton of personality. They just need to be that big, imposing dude. Like Jake Hager, we haven't seen a ton of personality from him, I wouldn't say either, but I think both him and Wardlow have great, like, I think they're really good at what they're doing. They're being the big eater, and they just need to stand there. And actually, one of my favorite things about, I know it sounds silly, but one of my favorite things about Jake Hager is that when even funny moments are going on, he just stands behind Jericho with like this straight face. And that, to me, that's character. He's just stoic and like nothing makes him laugh. He has no sense of humor. And it really makes me chuckle. So I think for what he's doing, he doesn't even need to build character. Let him show that once he turns babyface, and punches MJF in his stupid face.
All right. Next up, we have a short highlight package showing Eddie Kingston after Dynamite last week. After it went off the air, he cuts a vicious promo, basically saying how Moxley sold out, going to make millions as a sports entertainer. Kingston says he did not do that, and pro wrestling has just screwed him every which way, and that he's going to take the AEW championship from Jon Moxley. And then right after, we have basically a rebuttal to that. Jon Moxley saying how, yeah, he was a friend of Eddie Kingston. He wants his friend back, basically happy that he is with AEW now, and says he doesn't know who Kingston is now. And Moxley says he won't apologize for buying his mom a house, for giving his family a better life. And then says, yeah, you may not have quit, but you did go unconscious, so at Full Gear you're only gonna have yourself to blame when you lose, and you have to say I quit, because now the match between Moxley and Kingston is an I quit match at Full Gear.
Yeah, all right, so I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second. This was amazing. First of all, that whatever Kingston said to Moxley at the end of last week's show should have been on the air. Oh my gosh, that was great. Apparently the best stuff from I think that he said, because that was a good promo at the end of last week when he kind of turned on him and hit him with the back fist. But man, that was scathing, and I thought really good stuff. And I thought Moxley's response was incredible. Like, he shows so much passion, I think, in his promos. And I mean, now I don't want to wax too eloquent here, because like these are we already know, like, these are two of the best promos in the company. So like everyone knows that they're good, but I just have to say just how good they are. I mean, when Moxley just said, like, I won't apologize for buying my mom a house, when he said that, I was just like, oh, I feel that here. And like, I just saw Moxley and Kingston, what, 4 weeks ago, I think. And I want to see it again. I'm like, absolutely. These guys really made me care about this match. So I can't say enough good things about how good this package was.
Hey, and look at that. An I Quit match that makes sense, because Kingston is saying, I never gave up, I never quit, I never tapped. So now it makes sense that this match is an I Quit match, because now he can't go complaining about that if he loses, because he has to say I quit. So look at that, a stipulation that makes sense for the story.
It totally makes sense. And not only that, but I am I don't want to say I'm afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm afraid for Sammy and Matt Hardy. I'm afraid for that. I'm anxious about this match because I think they are going to get a little hardcore. If I remember correctly, I quit matches are generally under no DQ rules.
Yes. The only way to win
yeah,
is make your opponent say I quit. However you get
right.
there.
I'm pretty sure that it's going to get violent up in there, and I'm so excited to watch these two professionals really just take it to the next level. Because their match 4 weeks ago was good. Like, I liked it, but they are going to take this to the next level, and I can't wait.
In the words of Jon Moxley that he yelled into the camera before his match with Kenny Omega, it's time for some fucking trash wrestling.
You want garbage wrestling? I'll show you garbage wrestling.
All right. So yeah, excellent. I'm curious if the reason they had Kingston do the promo post after the show went off the air is that his promos have gotten long-winded and he can't maintain time when they've given him a live mic in the middle of the ring, because a lot of his segments have gone a little long.
That's a good question. I also wondered, I noticed that he used a little bit of language, and I was wondering whether or not maybe they didn't want some of that on TNT. I wasn't sure. I mean,
it was
I know
live though last week. It was live last week though. So since it was live, they wouldn't have known what he had said beforehand anyways.
Right.
All right, we move on to the shortest match of AEW's history. I am guessing. I'm pretty sure. But let's talk about the match, and then we'll talk about the entrance afterwards. The match was Kenny Omega versus Sonny Kiss. Joey Janela was supposed to be in this spot, but he had to get pulled from the show because he was at the Collective in Indiana, and he was on a lot of those shows, and he wrestled somebody who has subsequently tested positive for COVID, so he had to be yanked. I'm also guessing that is why Jon Moxley's video was not, why he wasn't actually in the building, and this was a video package for Moxley, because he was probably having to stay away as well, because he did one of the shows there, but he didn't come into direct contact with anybody that he knows of. But he is extremely cautious when it comes to this. I heard Meltzer talking about that last night as well, because he's exchanged some emails with Moxley, and Moxley's like, yeah, after Renee had COVID, like, no, I'm not screwing around with this crap. I'm going to be as cautious as possible. So he probably pulled himself just like he did back when his wife had COVID. So he might have even had to pull himself here because he was at those shows as well. So anyways, a Sonny Kiss versus Kenny Omega. Omega hits a V-trigger, hits a one-wing angle, gets the 3 count. That's it. That's exactly what happened. The aftermath, though, and the beginning, let's talk about the new entrance, or at least the exaggerated entrance that he had this week. Justin Roberts runs down a laundry list of accolades of Kenny Omega, and he just kept going and going and going and going. Talking about he's broken the Meltzer rating scale multiple times, or he won the G1. He was number 1 in PWI a couple years ago, etc., etc. And the 2 girls come out and they're dancing with brooms. So very reminiscent callback to the cleaner here. And then they have basically like this cloth type of setup over the entrance tunnel, and he's backlit through it, so you see a shadow, and it pulls down, and he kind of had like an exaggerated intro to his music. They changed up his video screen as well. And then after the match is over, he is just sitting there with a smug look on his face, like, yep, I'm that good. Yep, that just happened. And then he is like, all right, I'm going to try to get Sonny Kiss to his feet, shake his hand. He doesn't want to shake, so Kenny Omega just hugs him. And it's like such like salt into the wound type of attitude that he had, and I thought this was everything it needed to be.
I'm 100% with you. At risk of sounding like I feel like we have some similar opinions on a lot of this stuff, so at risk of agreeing too much, I couldn't agree more. I think that, first of all, I like the new cut of the music. It's a bit more intense. I never really liked the intro to his original music. It's good once it gets there, but this just kind of puts you right in the middle of the music, makes it very intense. The brooms was hilarious. I think that the match is exactly what it should have been. I'm wondering whether or not it would have been the same if it was Joey, because they have had some matches in the past that were very competitive. And I'm wondering if that was always the plan, or when it got switched out to be Sonny Kiss, whether or not they, called an audible and changed up what the match was going to be like. I also think it wasn't just after the match, actually, that he gave that really awesome smug face. It was during the pin. If you notice, he kind of sits out, has the pin, but he doesn't even reach for the second leg. Like, he just leans back, holds Sonny Kiss like one leg like this, and just stares into the camera like. And in that moment, I was just like, he's such a smarmy heel. Like, this is, now, I've heard some mixed reviews. I want your opinion. Was this heel Kenny Omega?
Yes. This was totally heel Kenny Omega.
That's what I thought,
This
too.
was, I'm full of myself, my ego can't fit in this building type of Kenny Omega.
Yes, exactly. Okay, we're on the same page then. Because I heard some people being like, oh no, he tried to, get Sonny Kiss, like, to cheer. But I'm like, yeah, but in an ironic, like, oh, you did so good,
Yeah.
Like, when your kid's like, and I'm a new father, but like, so my kid hasn't done this yet, but when he comes to me with a drawing and it's garbage and you're like, that's so good. Like, that's kind of what he was trying to do. He's like, you wrestled like crap, but everyone give him and then when he hugged him, and Sonny Kiss played it perfectly. Like, he was like, I'm not hugging you. You're what? You just did this and now you're going to act like you're my friend. So I thought that was perfectly played. Yeah. Everything about this segment was perfect for where they're going with Kenny. My only question is, and I'll pose this to you as well, do you think that they are going to go full, like, gear change, dark theme, kind of like the New Japan cleaner Kenny Omega with the sunglasses? Or are they going to kind of keep it at this character where he's, like, more smarmy and not as outright of a heel, but he's clearly very full of himself? What do you think?
I think eventually we're going to be in the dark Kenny Omega heel cleaner type of gimmick with the glasses and dark gear and all that fun stuff. I'm still hoping he pulls out my favorite pair of pants that he's ever had, is a black pair of pants with a tiny little wing on the hip. I don't know if you've ever seen that one in Japan. It's like an actual little white like feather wing stuck to his hip. It's awesome. It's like his best gear.
I'll have to look back then, because I watched a lot of New Japan when he was over there with like Bullet Club and stuff, and it doesn't ring any bells, so I'll go back and I'll look.
Next up, we have one of many segments. We have Tony Schiavone interviewing Orange Cassidy, and he says that some calls go your way, some don't, and Cassidy doesn't even seem to be that interested in anything. Didn't he say, yeah, I'll see you next week in Cincinnati or something like that? And he's like, we're going to be in Jacksonville. He's like, whatever.
Yeah, he said, we're on to Cincinnati. And he's like, nope, we're going to be right here in Jacksonville. And he goes, whatever.
Next up, we have Dasha. She is interviewing Arn Anderson and Cody as Cody's arriving to the building. And Cody basically says that he's surprised on how quickly AEW wants to do a rematch with Orange Cassidy. He says that he's hearing there might be a stipulation to go with it. And he says it doesn't matter. He's going to win anyways. And that one of the reasons he's been putting on some muscle is so he can be more of a heavyweight in AEW versus the other guys. So yeah.
Something I took out of both of these segments is that the interviewers look a lot less stupid in this company. I'm not going to point any fingers, but you guys know what we're talking about. Some of these interviewers like come up and they just have the most dumbest, obvious questions, and it's really just so that the performer can say their scripted line. And at least here, like, it kind of felt like both interviewers like had something they wanted to talk about. They put it out there for the performer. In the Orange Cassidy case, that one fell a little flat for me. I know he doesn't care about anything, but like I thought he was going to make a joke or something, and he really just seemed uninterested. But even beyond the kayfabe, like he just seemed not interested. So that seemed a little weird. The Dasha interview with Cody and Arn I thought was very good. She's asking him about putting on weight, like asking him real questions, and they got their point across. The point of the segment was to, highlight Cody, make sure he's still around. Again, people who weren't on the show wrestling, but making sure that they got some airtime. Not like Cody needs it, but to talk about moving into that heavyweight division, taking down guys who are bigger than him, and also specifically introducing the stipulation, or at least kind of giving you a hint that there was going to be a stip. So, I mean, I don't know. I just took away from both of these. I was like, hey, these interviewers are there with a point, at least.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Dasha, she came directly from WWE into AEW, and suddenly she has a personality. She was co-hosting Dark when it first came on with Tony. It's like, Dasha's awesome, and she's also doing Spanish commentary as well. So
I did not know that.
Yeah, she's the color on the Spanish commentary team. So yeah, so it's like, okay, suddenly she has a personality because she's not being produced to hell. So it's like, okay, Dasha's awesome.
More personality if you watch BTE.
Right,
she's hilarious on BTE.
She is great on BTE. So good here. Then we have another Eddie Kingston segment, and he's talking about how Pentagon and Fenix and Butcher and Blade will have success in their respective matches, and he had to become bitter after everything that's happened to him, and he says the ends justify the means, and also says that Moxley will have to go to a very dark place at Full Gear to beat him. So I'm guessing this is going to be a very, very violent match.
Yep, I think the same. This is actually, I didn't misspeak earlier, but now that I'm remembering, this is actually the one that gave me that impression, even more so than the previous promos. This one made me think, like, just kind of the grit in his voice, and just the way he looked in the camera. I was like, oh man, they got some plans. They're going to do something very violent at Full Gear. I'm very excited for that. Again, not much to say other than he's a fantastic promo. And if AEW is not using him backstage to help teach young guys how to promo, I'm not sure if they are or not. I don't know either way, but they should be if they're not, because this guy can show you how to cut a really impassioned promo.
Yeah, well, you have some of the AEW has some of the best promo guys in the business now. They have Jericho, Moxley, Eddie Kingston. They have Taz, they have Jake Roberts, though he hasn't been the strongest lately, but he knows how to get there. You have Cody has been cutting some of the best promos in the last year. His promos have been on the top as well. So, I mean, you currently have some of the best promos in the entire industry in AEW right now, and it's amazing.
One tangent before we go further. How many of the best promos out there, though, are in other companies where they're not letting them speak from here, right?
Right.
Or off the top of their head. Like, how many good promos are there in WWE? And they're just, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I bet you there are some promos in that company where you're like, if you heard them just straight, straight to camera, you'd be like, oh my God, you know what I mean? So I think that AEW is showing that they have these guys who can cut promos and allowing them, I guess, especially the guys who know what they're doing, to do a lot of their own stuff. I think it makes it much more apparent in AEW.
Yeah, I mean, most of the guys I can think of, they're all in NXT. Of course, a couple on the main. You got Daniel Bryan. I mean, he pretty much writes all of his own promos anyways. I'm guessing Jeff Hardy, for the most part, does his own promos, but he's never been that great of a promo. But then you have Adam Cole, Ciampa, Gargano. Actually, you have the entire Undisputed Era. They're all Finn Balor. They're all ridiculously good promos outside of WWE's landscape, and within NXT, they're not too bad. But outside, they've done some crazy good promos.
It's just a pin before we move forward with AEW. Did you see the package that they did between Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly before their takeover match?
I did not.
Go ahead and go find it. If you haven't seen it yet, they did a sit down mediated by Shawn Michaels between Kyle O'Reilly and Finn Balor. And when I was done, I was just like, why are these guys not talking more? And they should be doing their own stuff. Because, I mean, even if it was scripted, their delivery, it was just wonderful. So definitely check that out.
Next match we have is another Eliminator. It is Rey Fenix against his brother Penta El0M. And there was a scary spot in this match. So this match went as about you would think it went. They were flying around like crazy, and they did show a little bit of respect at the beginning, shaking hands and giving a hug before they locked up. But this match was just really high speed. There was I like that this happened because Penta knows Fenix so well. When Fenix went to do his tightrope run across the top rope, Penta pushed the rope out from under him, which was great. I love that. I love when somebody who does a like signature spot a zillion times and finally somebody, just counters it because it's so obvious that it's coming. That was good. But then we have the spot Fenix goes, was it a flying head scissors where he just crashed headfirst into the ground, and it looked like he was on Dream Street, and the match kind of fell apart a little bit for a moment as Fenix kind of regained his bearings. They did a pretty good job at doing a little bit slowed down just so he could get back. But then it looked like he was back to like nothing happened, hitting a springboards, and Penta hit a springboard sling blade for near fall. And then they continued to go everywhere around. They were fighting on the outside, on the inside. Penta goes up to the top rope with Fenix. Fenix hits him with a one-man Spanish fly off the top for a near fall. And then Penta hits Fenix with a pop-up power bomb for near fall, and then he follows that up with the arm break spot that he's done to his own brother. Fenix comes back and then hits Penta with like this, I don't even know what to call it. He kind of did like a head scissors into a destroyer, sort of.
I think I would call it a tilt-a-whirl into Canadian destroyer.
Yes,
but man, that looked good.
Yeah, it was crazy, and gets the 3 count. So Rey Fenix moves on, and he will face Kenny Omega next week, or they might push it because the injury is. I haven't heard an update on Fenix. I heard that he was okay, but they might, just for out of abundance of caution, push the match another week between Fenix and Kenny Omega, but we will see. I mean, these two have had a bunch of matches in Mexico. Kenny Omega is still the AAA Mega Champion, and he actually took it off of Rey Fenix. That's how he got the championship. So I'm sure these two will have a pretty crazy match. Though if him coming out as the cleaner and just wiping the floor with Sonny Kiss, I'm curious if this is to make Fenix look awesome, and then Kenny Omega's just gonna like clean his clock. I'm curious what happens.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely potential for that to happen. I would really, really want to see them go, 19 out of 20 minutes and just have a burn the house down kind of a match. But they may do something a little similar different depending on their booking. We'll see what happens. I have to say about this match, first of all, it was very good when Fenix wasn't almost dead. When he was scary moment there, you're right. The match kind of ground to a halt. I have to say though, and this is, I'm really hoping that he didn't do a top rope Spanish fly being concussed. Like, I hope he's fine. I really do, hope that he's doing well. But this match for me, like in my grade book, was still like an A-. Like, despite the fact that there was like a minute and a half where not a lot happened, and it was kind of obvious that, the ref and everyone was kind of checking on each other. Despite that, I was like, there's not too many matches that I would put in the A bracket, even if it was like an A-, where there was a minute and a half of dead time. Yeah. And everything else in this match was great. And I also want to say that, in my opinion, so this proves something to me about the Lucha Bros, because I have not been their biggest fan. Not from a moves perspective, but from a psychology perspective. I think that they embody a little bit more of what people used to think about the Young Bucks, that they used to do all these spots. There wasn't a lot of psychology. And, I think that in my mind, I was like, no, the Bucks aren't like that. But the Lucha Bros, I was like, yeah, kind of, you know what I mean? This match told a story. There was some good psychology here. The shaking the hands at first, Penta didn't want to shake hands, so Fenix said no, but then they end up shaking hands. The arm break spot, and then obviously you could tell that Penta let off the gas a little bit because he was like, "Oh dang, I just did that to my brother. Like, I just broke his arm." I'm like, so there was some really good moments. Like you said, knocking him off the top rope. There were some good moments where I was thinking they're telling a story here. This is really, really good. And Fenix winning in the end, I think, was kind of like from bell to bell. It was a good story, and Fenix winning, I think, was the right call. In the end, I was very impressed with both of them. I'd like to see them in more singles action. This match kind of changed my mind a little bit about the fact that they're not just spot monkeys. And yeah, that finish, that tilt-a-whirl into destroyer, or whatever you want to call it, looked so good. Like when he hit that, I was just like, yum. So good.
That was great. I really liked Penta in Lucha Underground. He had a lot more character there just because he had more promo time nonetheless. He did all of his promos in Spanish and then they subtitled everything, which was great. And he's like super intense on the microphone, especially like in-ring mic work. So that was it's great because it was taped, because so even the in-ring promos were still subtitled because it was taped ahead of time. So those were always great. And that arm break spot is something that he used a lot to take out a lot of people in Lucha Underground. So yeah, then we next have a highlight package, really, of just the best friends destroying Kip Sabian's video game cabinet. Whoever built the cabinet so damn flimsy should be fired, and that thing should have been returned. Miro is then shown attacking the best friends last week, and as basically best friends ruined everything, and now they're going to have to pay, basically.
I was hoping that they were going to develop this a little bit more. Sometimes I don't mind when, or actually, I don't even want to say I don't mind. I actually sometimes like when, you have most of your storytelling happen in the ring or live on the show. But if they develop something like, hey, backstage, best friends, got their heat back and they started, beating up Miro, and this is clearly a feud. Even if they did a taped 1 minute altercation, right? Like, that's fine. I thought they were going to further it a little bit more, but it was really just kind of a recap of a segment that was already short. So I was like, feeling kind of weird about it. And then Kip Sabian explains that Allen is some sort of acronym for his board. And like, it's just continuing in the direction we talked about last week that I'm not a huge fan of. It seems like a weird grudge that I understand the gimmick is that they're on Twitch and they play video games. But like, it just seems a little too hokey for me, and continues to be a storyline that Miro is involved in. And I think Miro should be, roasting fools left and right. So
yeah, this highlight package made no sense to be on the show at all, because neither of them were on the show, and there's no hype for a match next week, right? So why was this highlight even on the show? It was basically nothing. So like,
if you ask me, I think that this is going to be on the buy-in for Full Gear.
Yeah, but even then, why would they put it on this show? It makes sense either on next week or the week after show, not this one. So I guess we'll see how it goes. Hopefully next week they might, build on this a little bit so we actually get this fleshed out a little bit. But this highlight really made no sense. They could have taken it out and then do the build next week. Because none of them were on the show. It made no sense because none of the matches ahead had anything to do with either team. So it didn't really make it. Next up, we have Alex Marvez interviewing some Dark Order members. Alex Reynolds says that they have a huge opportunity for him and John Silver. Colt Cabana, he is on a mission for the AEW Championship, and Cabana and Silver argue about the pressure the Dark Order is under, and Silver's just like going crazy.
I love John Silver. I think that he's got a lot of babyface potential once the crowds come back. So he's this guy that like, he's clearly over on BTE and like with the hardcore AEW fan base who are watching, online and BT Dark, all this stuff. Like, he's clearly over. But I think they're waiting for him until the crowds come back, because he's this little dude and he's just really excitable. And like the whole gimmick on BTE is that he's literally a child. But I think once people come back and he gets like that big, 5,000 people just chanting or cheering him on, like I think that'll be a moment for him because there are certain people I think that you just need to have at least half capacity crowd. You need some noise for these people. John Silver's one of them for me. Also, just want to ask you this. Is it like clear that there's both a babyface and a heel part of Dark Order? Like it seems like Uno and Cabana are clearly babyface, but like Silver, Brody, like they're heels. So it's kind of like they remind me of Undisputed Era right now, where half of them are babyface and half of them are heel.
Yes, that's exactly how I feel. Like, Colt Cabana is still a baby face. Uno has been kind of turning baby face. Like he's been very hesitant or questioning of Brody's tactics. He's also been the butt end of a lot of Brody's fervor as well. So, so he's probably getting a little disillusioned with Brody. Of course, Silver is probably a tweener at this point. I wouldn't call him a heel or a babyface, but if anything, he's going to be more on the babyface side anyways. Reynolds is kind of a goofball, so he kind of lands in the middle as well. But yeah, and then you have Stu Grayson, who is clearly a heel, Anna Jay, who is clearly a heel, Brody Lee, obviously a heel. But yeah, you have a little bit of like people who are on the face side and people who are on the heel side, a couple in between. That's kind of like mediator between the two sides. So yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic within the Dark Order. I'm sure that's going to come into play at some point.
I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. Talk about turning chicken shit into chicken salad at this point. Dark Order was like disastrous for the beginning of AEW, and now it's like one of my favorite things on AEW.
Absolutely. Dark Order, when they came out, I was just like, because they presented them when the first, debuted, they kind of presented it like, first of all, we should know who Stu Grayson and Uno were, because they used to be the Super Smash Bros. Back on PWG, and like only a handful of fans really knew that. I didn't know that, and I was in wrestling, like I was into it. And I didn't know who they were when they came out, and they played it like we should know. And then they made them really goofy in the beginning. But I think through just seeing more exposure, bringing Brody Lee in was a huge help because he's got like plenty of personality. He's really where they started to turn around for me, his inclusion with the Dark Order. But yeah, especially I think if you're watching BTE, and I don't want to make this too much of a BTE review, but if you're watching that, then these guys are getting over naturally on YouTube, and I think a little bit more on Dynamite as well. So you're 100% right. They have turned this into something that I care about, weirdly enough.
Yeah, I think BTE has been kind of a testing ground for various things, and then as they're like, oh, this totally works, let's kind of start pulling this over to Dynamite. I think that's probably where they test some of that stuff out, and it's like, oh, the people are really happy with it. Yeah, let's pull it over. But sometimes I wish they showed clips on BTE on Dynamite just to get some of this stuff over as well. I really, really wished that they put in the video of Brody Lee the first time they thought they had got Jungleboy, and it was Griff Garrison. That was like the best segment, and that should have been on Dynamite because it was so good. Obviously,
they absolutely should have, because they're also like, even though BTE is totally this weird mix of like not only kayfabe, but like kayfabe onto itself, because they're telling their own little stories. Like for instance, if we were BTE and Dynamite were the same timeline, then it would have been Michael Nakazawa instead of Colt Cabana pretending to be Colt Cabana, because that's what they're running with right now. But instead, like actual Colt Cabana came out for his match, right? Like obviously. But there are some things like all of the Dark Order being afraid of Brody Lee, and like he's the leader, but they're terrified and they're trying to like impress him. Like we recruited Jungleboy, right? That would have been perfect because it only serves to give them further character.
Or Stu Grayson being completely terrified of Anna Jay.
Yes, that's perfect.
Daxter says removing the creepers, that definitely helped. As long as they don't show Nakazawa as Colt. Yeah, we just talked about that. So, all right. So we move on. We have the final Eliminator. Yes, the final eliminator, and this is Colt Cabana. Colt Cabana, Evil Uno comes out to second him versus Hangman Page. I thought this was a pretty solid match. The story of the match I thought was Page being a little unsure of himself in this match. I thought that he didn't have a ton of confidence, and Colt Cabana seemed to have all the confidence in the world in this match. Uh, this match went actually pretty long too. Probably I didn't time it, but I'm guessing it probably went 12 minutes or so. It went through a commercial break.
I didn't time it either, but I thought it was a little long for my taste.
Yeah, it did run a little long. Near the end of the match, we have Colt Cabana attempting the flying apple. Page counters that. And then actually Colt Cabana tries for a Chicago skyline, but Page escapes. He misses a buckshot lariat. Colt Cabana gets him in the Superman pin for a near fall, and then Page he teases like he's going to do the buckshot, and Colt Cabana ducks, and then he actually does the buckshot as Colt Cabana's coming up to look to see what's going on, takes him out. I thought that was a nice little deke to have Colt Cabana, duck something that wasn't coming and then hit him with the follow-up. So I thought that was a good finish, and then the Dark Order comes out to collect Colt Cabana, while Hangman Page is just kind of looking out of the side of his eye just to make sure that he's okay and nobody's going to be attacking him. But this, again, Page looked very unsure of himself and a little hesitant in spots. Like he wasn't as confident as he usually would be. Of course, this time Kenny Omega is not out on commentary, so that's another thing. He was out on commentary for the previous two singles matches that Adam Page has had, and it was before Kenny Omega basically said, I want nothing to do with Adam Page. We're done. I'm never going to tag with him again.
Right. I thought that this match went a bit long, like you said, and I also don't know if I was fully like the story of the match. I get, that I think you're right, that he was kind of unsure of himself. He didn't know exactly where to go. There was one point where he teased he was going to put Colt through a table outside, chose not to, like literally just kind of anxious and like not exactly sure where he's going, kind of finding his footing. But I just think that it didn't work for me exactly maybe the way they wanted it to. I think it went a little long. I've already said that, but like honestly, it just should have been shorter. He should have dispatched him a little bit easier, I think. Not that I don't like Colt Cabana, but I think that there's a different story that they're telling, and it made Page just look a little, I don't know, like they went toe to toe, really. They were kind of evenly matched, and I don't know if that's exactly what I thought or where I think that it should be. And I think that like the best part of the match was definitely the finish, the deke, and then the buckshot was really good. But for the first part, they were kind of being real technical, kind of like almost like I heard someone say that it was kind of a British style. I agree with that, but I don't think it was right for the match. This was one of the lower points in terms of in-ring action for me, which to be honest, I like both guys for sure, and I'm a huge fan of Adam Page in ring. Colt Cabana, I don't watch him as much. But I don't know, it didn't work for me just the way I think that it was intended. I think it's obviously the right result. But then even after the match, like nothing really happened. I wasn't sure if there was going to be some post-match shenanigans, and they just kind of came and got Colt, walked away, and Hangman just kind of looked like he was out there on his own. Overall, this was, again, probably the lower part of the match for me, or I'm sorry, of the night. But one thing I did notice that I actually did like was that Hangman's Chiron, or his banner, is back, and it said that he entered the tournament via a series of drunken voicemails. So I know that there was a period there where they didn't put, I don't think he had a little banner, but it came back. This was at least the first week I noticed it. Maybe it was previously, but it said he has entered this tournament by a series of drunk emails or voicemails. So that made me chuckle. But overall, right result. I just thought the match was slow, and I was expecting something a little bit more snappy.
Yeah, I mean, Hangman's been a tormented character for a while now, so I think, like I said, with Kenny, prior to him saying, I want nothing to do with Hangman, Hangman was kind of that hopeful guy, and he wrestled as such, and now Kenny is gone, though they didn't really tell that story fully, but now it looks like Hangman is missing something. Like Kenny had some sort of confidence building or calming effect for Hangman, where now he is completely alone. He doesn't have the Young Bucks. He doesn't have Omega. He's completely by himself. He has no friends at this point, and he's just kind of lost by himself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't really thought of him not having anybody there. No Kenny, no Bucks. Maybe that shows why. Maybe he's a little codependent. You know what I mean? Like he's got to have someone there to give him that confidence boost, or even in terms of Kenny in his previous matches, almost someone to show off, kind of be like, no, I can do this on my own. But now that he's really out there on its own, he did look like the millennial anxious cowboy that his gimmick purports to be. So to be fair, yeah, I guess that he did kind of show off that side of the character.
Next up, we have a video package covering the feud between Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy. Sammy says he's basically not going to stop until Matt is sent home permanently, or I believe I'm not going to stop until he's buried in the ground, or something along those lines that he said. And then they say this is going to be an elite deletion match. So this is going to be a pre-tape. It's going to be a cinematic match, I'm guessing, at the Hardy compound. They're finally getting to this match where it looked like it was going to happen all the way back at the beginning of the year, but they ended up doing Stadium Stampede instead. So yeah. We're finally getting the Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy at the Matt Hardy compound match.
Yep, I got the vibe that that's exactly what this is going to be. It's going to be not necessarily buried alive rules, but I do think kind of similar to the final deletion. They're going to have him, maybe in a pit, have to bury him somehow, throw him in the lake of reincarnation. They've done so many different versions of that, but I definitely feel like that's where they're going with this. Like you said, finally. But hey, if missing out on this months ago gave us the Stadium Stampede, I'm fine with that too, because that was also entertaining in itself.
Stadium Stampede was gold.
But I am glad. I'm also glad that this is going to be able to be pre-taped, because in that sense, like, hey, if there's a dangerous looking spot,
crash
throw
pads.
in a crash pad, edit it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm worried, even with all of that said, I'm still worried that maybe, someone catches a left hook a little too hard, or you know what I mean? Like
a tree falls on them in the middle of the forest.
Right, exactly. Like I'm just so worried that something's gonna go wrong. But I am looking forward to this for sure. And I also thought that they gave Sammy a little bit of a darker character twist too. I think like the serial killer board and the lighter. I just thought that all gave me a little bit more of a kind of a dark and twisted kind of vibe to him. Other than you're just kind of like Les Sex Gods, that's gone. Like this is Sammy like in a hood and looking kind of creepy. So I like that. I like it's a little bit of character development for him, and it fits the feud. It was kind of like letters written in blood on the wall. So yeah, I'm definitely interested, and as long as it leads to something cool at the Hardy compound, I'm so excited.
Next up, we have Team Taz on the stage. Taz says that they have two problems, one being Will Hobbs, and basically wants an answer from, he should have answered a little quicker. And Taz also says the second is Darby Allin, and why is he getting a title shot at Full Gear? And then Starks talks about how he's gonna have to pay for the next for what he's done, and that he wants a title shot at the TNT Championship if Allen wins, basically. So again, solid promos. Of course, Taz is always good promo. Ricky Starks is amazing. I don't even know how old Ricky Starks is. I should look it up, but he's not that old, so he's gonna have a huge career ahead of him if he continues on this path, because he is so good on the microphone.
Yeah, Ricky Starks. So I gotta be real quick. When Ricky Starks came into AEW, there was a couple different, I think 2 or 3 weeks, where he had like a minute and a half of mic time. The one that really sticks out, I think, was the first week. It wasn't his debut, because he debuted, I believe, against Cody during the TNT Open Challenge or Championship. I think that was his first match in AEW, but his first little bit of promo was back in Gorilla with Taz and Brian Cage. And he literally, all he had to do was introduce himself, tell you a little bit what he's about. And in that moment, I was like, this guy is supremely talented on the mic. and he needs to be elevated. And I was expecting them to go now. Hey, a feud with Darby Allin is awesome. Like, I think Darby's great. He's proven in year one of Dynamite that he's fantastic. So I think that, this definitely has legs. I'm not mad about it at all. And it's a 2-hour show. They've only got one show weekly. It's kind of hard. Well, I mean, they've got Dark, but I mean, on, television, they've got 2 hours. You can only fit in so many guys. You've got to kind of finish storylines before you can start something else up. But I mean, again, sooner rather than later, I want to see Starks in a televised feud, like in a program with someone, maybe even in the TNT Championship scene, because every time he gets on the mic or even wrestles, I'm just very, very impressed. He's becoming a favorite of mine very quickly. I've started looking up old Ricky Starks stuff before, like in NWA, and he's great. He's so good. So I'm very, very excited, and I hope that they pull the trigger on him, at least for some sort of feud, down the road. And when he gets that match with Darby, I'll be thrilled.
He seems to be a bit of a stand-up guy as well, because when he came out that time and he clocked the crap out of Darby from behind, and then like 2 weeks later he's taking the skateboard to the back, is probably like, oh, I'm sorry for hitting you so hard. What do you want me to do for you? He's like, will you take a skateboard to the back with Tax? He's like, yeah.
I agree totally. It sounds like he's a really great guy, like backstage, non-kayfabe here. But I would have not taken that. I would have been like, I'm sorry, you can hit me kind of hard, but to take the that thumbtack skateboard spot was rough, man. That tore him open because it didn't just tax. It like
slid across him too.
No, thank you. No thanks.
Wrestling Inc. puts him at 26 years old, so he's got
26.
Plenty of time. His debut was 2011, so he's basically been wrestling since he was like 17 years old. So
that's insane.
So he's been wrestling for 8-9 years now. So yeah, amazing. So he's got plenty of time ahead of him, and I think he's. So now we have some massive young talent in their early to mid 20s. We have Jungleboy, he's like 23. MJF, I think, just barely turned 24. Ricky Starks is only 26. Darby Allin, I think, is 27. So, geez.
I would love to fast forward 5 years, and I just want to see like one episode of Dynamite 5 years from now, who's in the top positions, because they have gotten in on the ground level with some of these guys. Like, again, we just talked about Sammy Guevara.
Jeez, how did I leave him off? He's 27.
Right, like they've got guys. Even Will Hobbs, I don't think is that old either. Like, there's a group of guys who, because right now we're like, Moxley's great, but like, yeah, we all know he had this big WWE run. You know what I mean? Like, they've got some guys who are really hitting their prime in creative now, but the group of guys who are going to, some kid right now is out there growing up with these AEW originals. And in 5 years, 10 years, you're going to look back on some of these guys and they're hitting, like I said, guys in their 20s and early 30s who have 10, 15 years, 20 years in some cases ahead of them if they've got longevity like Jericho does, and that they're going to be able to utilize them to their full potential. Like, I cannot wait to see what they do. And again, one day you're going to look at these guys and say, yeah, they were like an AEW original guy, you know what I mean? And that's where I think they should move in the next couple years with a lot of their championships. I think they need to get away from, and not that all of them have been great, like Brody Lee, Moxley, Jericho. They've all been wonderful, but they need to move to some of the homegrown talent, I think. And I just can't wait to see what they do with them.
Yeah, Hobbs is probably around 30 to 33, I'm guessing. His debut was 2009. They don't have a date for him for his birthday, but so I'd put him 30 to 33, somewhere around there. So,
I think he looks young. I mean, if he is 33, good for him, because he's got, to me, when I look at him, I think he's, my age or younger. So, yeah, and I'm 28.
Moxley is only 34.
I'm reminded of a line from Indiana Jones. It's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah. So, yes, he does look a lot older than he is, but he's still only 34. So, he's got some time as well.
I guess so.
Yeah. Next up, we have the most divisive segment probably in AEW history at this point. Jericho and MJF, they are sitting at their table waiting for the waitress to arrive, and then they finally order their meals. Oh, crap. I missed the name of the girl. Velma.
Velma, or if you're MJF,
Thelma.
It's Velma.
Yes. And Jericho's like, it's Velma with a V. He puts up his two fingers. But of course MJF keeps calling her Thelma, TH, which is funny. And then they try to one up each other on the rareness of the steak, because MJF orders his steak well done. Blasphemous. Total heel move right there. And then then Jericho's like, I'll have mine medium well. And then MJF's like, cancel my order. I'll take mine medium. And they just go down, and Jericho's like, I'll take mine blue, which is extra rare. And then they're like, what are we doing here? You know, and Jericho's like, you've been rude to everybody. And then he says that Inner Circle is going to hold a town hall next week to see if MJF should be included into the group. And then they break out into a rendition of a song from Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra called Me and My Shadow, with some changed lyrics. This was hilarious. So some of the lyrics, well, the original lyric was the first couple lines, like wallpaper sticks to a wall, like seahorse clings to the sea, or like seashore clings to the sea. Those are original lyrics from the original. And then they continue to go on. They talk, one of the lyrics that Jericho says, we're closer than snakes are, they slide through the grass, we're closer than Cody's to a jackass. What else do we have?
Also, don't leave out, I loved the, and I'm glad I can already tell we're on the same page about this segment. This is perfect variety, because like sometimes you watch pro wrestling just because it's fun and it's entertaining, and like you can get away with occasional like ludicrousy because it's just like, it's pro wrestling, you know what I mean? It's not like a drama show. You're watching CSI and then they break out into song. Like that would never happen. But you're watching pro wrestling because there is an off chance that something silly happens, right? This was the perfect amount of silly, which was way over the top. And even though the lyrics were good, I think what was even better is that what you thought was a wall behind them opens up into a ballroom, and there are girls back there in like gold Vegas outfits dancing. They start dancing with these girls. They drop the girls on the floor, like they do a dip and then drop them. They're doing their little like Rat Pack dance, and like even more than the song, just the presentation of it all was perfect. They're just these two horrible smarmy heels that you love to hate. And if you didn't like this segment, then like that's also perfect, because they are they're the perfect characters for this segment, because first of all, they can sing. I knew that MJF could sing. Like something in the back of my head said that he used to be in choir or something like that. But you don't really think about it in pro wrestling until he does it, and then you're like, oh man, he's actually got this amazing like tenor. He's so good. But like they were the perfect guys for this, because if you're Jim Cornette or you're just got like a purist and you're like, this has no place in wrestling, then that's perfect. You hate MJF and Jericho even more. So, oh man, I can't say enough about this. This was hilarious.
So we have closer than a recliner thrown at Matt Hardy's forehead geyser, was one. And then what else do we have? We'll end up at Daly's and then the fourth floor. I'm not sure what that is a reference to, though. And then we'll drop into Chili's Hey Young Bucks, Screw You, which is a reference to BTE, with the Bucks trying to get sponsorship by Chili's, and actually Dark Order gets sponsored by Chili's. We'll beat up Moxley, whatever we do. Life is gonna be wee wowie, me and my shadow and me. So very funny rendition of Me and My Shadow from the Rat Pack. So
yep.
Hilarious.
Leaving out the best part, well, not the best part, but hilarious, when they sat back down, the curtain closes, they're back in the restaurant, their steaks get brought to them, and they look down and they go, oh, this is disgusting. We're gonna have to send that back.
Yeah, they're like they're uncooked steaks. They weren't even porterhouses.
No, they were not porterhouses.
They ordered porterhouses, and they weren't even porterhouses, which is even funnier for people who noticed that it wasn't even a porterhouse. So that was pretty funny. We're gonna have to send this back.
Budget somewhere.
Yeah.
But I thought that was hilarious because they've already, it was so intent. I'll have mine rare, And then when they got it, they were like, oh, this is gross.
If I'm going to have a porterhouse, it's going to be rare. That's the only way to have it. No well done crap.
Definitely not well done.
No. Let's see. Then we have Dr. Britt Baker coming back, having a match versus KiLynn King. King is 0-11 going into this match. Basically, Britt Baker beat the crap out of her, puts on the hits the curb stomp and puts on the lockjaw, and KiLynn has to tap out. Really nothing to sneeze at for this particular match. It's just a relatively quick squash match for Britt Baker. I don't think anything looked horrible, so
no. Yeah, and one thing I noticed that actually, maybe I just never noticed this before, but I like that a lot of Britt Baker's moveset is very like face based, because not just the lockjaw, but even like she's hitting a lot of kicks to the face, the curb stomp. She had I think one spot where she had them pulled up against the ring post. And I thought she was just going to jam her arm on the ring post, kind of classic, I'm going to jam your arm. But instead, she pulled her toward her and then kicked her in the face. I'm like, oh, like she really has this weird fixation with messing up people's mouth, teeth, so that she can fix it. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I also thought that, is it Reba? I think it's Reba, right?
Rebel.
But
okay. Baker keeps calling her Reba. She doesn't know that her name is Rebel, but she keeps calling her Reba.
Okay, so Rebel/Reba. I think that her evolution, because if I remember correctly, when they first started putting her like in segments and stuff, she was like a little bit more like afraid, kind of like whoa, like Britt Baker was up in her face, and now she's like clearly kind of a heel manager in a sense, like, or at least seconding her. So like she was like taunting her opponent here, and I was like, it's just kind of funny that now she's like totally on board with the Britt Baker role model heel turn. I love it.
So it's funny that she still gets treated like crap by Britt Baker, and Britt Baker still doesn't know her name.
Right.
Which is always funny.
A little bit of Stockholm syndrome there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I've always loved Rebel in all of what she's been doing with Britt Baker. She's been actually such a bright spot, especially when it came to all the segments where Britt Baker was on the shelf, but she was still at ringside. The dumpster story was always my favorite. That is still my favorite Britt Baker segment so far. When when Rebel's using her phone, using the find a phone to track Britt's phone to find where she is, and finds her in the dumpster. That was always funny. Then we have a short video package. Darby Allin is with Jackass's Steve-O. Steve-O is looking very old. So Allin gets into a body bag and he rolls himself off the top of a half pipe and says, "Screw it, I'm gonna go win the TNT championship." And that was it.
Yeah, this was like also. So I mentioned that the Hangman match was my in-ring like lower point of, and not that he was even bad, but it was my low point for this show. I was like, this is all right. This was my low point in terms of the packages and promos. Even like the Taz quick promo with Ricky Starks was way better. Like, and even that felt a little like off. This was like, I don't even know where this came from, because again, it doesn't have anything to do with what came before it, what came after it. It was just this weird insert, and it wasn't wrestling at all. It wasn't like, the Lance Archer package where they had him destroying dudes in Darby Allin's backyard. Like, it was just weird Darby doing weird Darby stuff. And I like Darby, but he was just throwing himself off a ramp in a skate park. And then he was like, I'm going to win the TNT championship. It's like, what you just did makes me think that you're going to die before you get there.
Well, I like the spoof part where where it was clearly a Jackass spoof, because he's like, my name is Darby Allin and this is the body bag drop-in. That's what they would always do before their stunts in Jackass. So I that got a chuckle out of me, but it just felt very strange. Like, I liked a lot of Darby Allin's video segments that he would send in earlier. Some of these stunt ones are not as good. I like the ones where he would do kind of the very noir filming style and doing some voiceover, which is very like the neo noir type of formats with the the voiceovers. But here the best been kind of like stunts here and there that it's like, okay, go back to the film noir stuff.
Right, I agree with that. This was another example for me, kind of what I mentioned last week about Miro and Kip Sabian, where I think some of these guys are getting maybe just a little too much liberty on what they do and, you know, how they're presented. Because, again, if I'm the booker here and I'm in charge of AEW, I'm not putting Miro in a video game-driven feud because just of how awesome and such a destroyer he is. I'm not going to put him in something that seems so silly. And Darby, like, I know Darby wants to... not kill himself, but like he wants to do these crazy stunts, and that's cool and all, but like this was not, it didn't feel wrestling related at all. It was just kind of silly, and I know it's what he wants to do, and he, you know, it was so Darby for sure, but like if he's gonna go up against Cody and I'm gonna believe him, like I want a little bit of a hype package for that, and this didn't hype me for that. This just made me go, is this what you do on your Saturdays? Like, all right.
Well, I think right now it's like he doesn't know who he's going to be facing, if he's going to be facing Orange or Cody, because they have the match next week, which we didn't talk about, that it's actually been announced as a lumberjack match now. So we have that coming up next week. So I wish I had everything that's happening next week in front of me. Do you have the list of everything that's happening next week?
I don't. I did not pull it up. I know that that is happening, and I know that we're obviously getting the semifinals for the Eliminator tournament. So we're going to get Omega and Fenix and get Hangman and Wardlow. Other than those three matches, I think there were one or two more that were announced, but I don't remember what they were.
All right, I will pull that up if I can find it. Oh, actually.
Also, as a tangent, totally forgot to talk about this. Wardlow has pretty good music.
His music's awesome.
His music's good. I was like, wow.
I wrote that in the chat last night.
What'd you say?
I wrote that in the chat last night. Wardlow's music is awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, when it started, I was like, okay. And, you know, it kind of ramped up. It's got this like dark driven metal. And I was like, wow, this is all right. Because AEW for me, like as a small aside, a small tangent, I don't think that some of their music's like great. I mean, I understand when you're comparing it to like New Japan or WWE, where they've got big budget for this kind of stuff and they can bring in big creators. Like there are some bangers in WWE. Like some of these theme songs are great. So like I understand they maybe don't have the same spend or maybe even just the access to the same creators. But there are certain songs, so certain ones in AEW stand out for me. Like Young Bucks, I think, is really good. But this was like in that tier. I was like, this is very good music for Wardlow, of all people.
Yeah, it's solid. I got the next week. We have Hangman versus Wardlow, Omega versus Fenix, Tay Conti versus Abaddon. That is going to be interesting. Cody versus Orange Cassidy in a lumberjack match, and then the town hall with the Inner Circle, and then made for Full Gear, we have Moxley Kingston is now an I Quit match. Matt Hardy, Sammy Guevara in the Ultimate Deletion match. Darby Allin will challenge for the TNT title. And then the winners of the final match of the evening, we have Butcher and Blade with the Bunny. The Bunny has returned and turned her back on QT Marshall, though without much anything. It just kind of happened on Dark.
I heard it happened on Dark.
Yeah, it happened on Dark. And nothing really happened. She just came out as the Bunny, and just basically turned her back on QT Marshall. So really not much of a payoff from that storyline. So that is unfortunate. But we have the Bunny back, which is good. I'm looking forward to see what she does. She's good in the ring too. So I don't know why. I hope she, especially if she's going to be a heel, she can be a lot.
I mean, we keep saying the Bunny, but like we're forgetting that this is Allie, right? Allie, like yeah. Allie's been good for AEW. Like every time she's been out there, I mean, she's had some okay, you know what I mean? But like I don't remember at least any like stinkers of any matches, and at best, like I think she's good. So
she's
like,
fine. Like if she hasn't wrestled as the Bunny, so now if she takes a much more heel tactics or a lot more brutal tactics, I think she could be really good if she just like destroys opponents with lots of strikes and just like beats the crap out of them. I think she could be really good at that. Versus the Dark Order, John Silver and Alex Reynolds, Young Bucks, Nick and Matt Jackson, Private Party, Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassidy, Matt Hardy at ringside for them. This match, of course, was a fatal 4-way, and the rules were 2 legal men at a time. Of course, given that it is what it is, there was plenty of breakdowns where everybody was beating the crap out of everybody. There was one very, very scary spot where Private Party does their double team splash and leg drop on Alex Reynolds, and he got knocked out legitimately. He was out for like 45 seconds. Like, nobody even realized that he was knocked out. At one point, I think the Blade might have figured out what was going on, and he actually dragged him over to his corner so he could tag himself in and get in. But I don't think anybody at ringside realized what was going on. I think that they think he was just selling. Eventually he does come to, and he goes into a spot with the Bucks, and I think it was Nick who hit a bulldog and realized that he was not all there, and then they rolled Reynolds out of the ring, and he didn't come back to the match. They continue on and finish out the match with Matt missing a charge in the corner, but then the Bucks start taking out everybody, and then Matt catches Cassidy in a roll-up and get the 3. So the Young Bucks are going to be facing FTR at Full Gear.
Overall, I thought it was a good match. There was definitely a little scare there, obviously, with Reynolds. I thought that, and this is maybe just me, but like, this seemed like a little bit of a regression on the tag team scene, where I think they've done a pretty good job of like explaining the rules, or at least maybe not even explaining, but like following unwritten rules that maybe like they don't say these are the rules to the tag team match, but like they're doing better about tag ropes, or people coming in, tagging in, clearly tagging in. And this match, I was like, are the rules different for this match? Maybe they were, and I just didn't understand. But it seemed a little messier than usual. I think maybe it has to do a little bit with some of the inexperience of a couple of the teams. I know Butcher and Blade and the Bucks are generally pretty well trusted. I know Private Party are a little green. And I mean, I'm saying all of this as a non-wrestler. So like, but from my view, I think Private Party are a little inexperienced, and maybe the same of Reynolds and Silver. Though I think that they've shown me that they're pretty decent here as of late.
Silver himself, he is amazing. There was a spot in here where he was just running around taking out everybody, and it was excellent. Right. So Silver has had some very, very good sequences within matches, and I think at some point, if he breaks out, I think if AEW has sort of like a I don't even know, a cruiserweight division, he would be like sitting on top of that division because he is just so damn good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, actually. A cruiserweight division would be really neat. Although, unfortunately, I think that would comprise like 75% of the roster.
Maybe they'll lower it instead of, well, I think, WWE has 205 as the cutoff. New Japan has 100 kilos, which is like 220 pounds. So they can lower it to be like 190 and below.
Sure. I'd be fine with that. Absolutely. Because I think there are a lot of guys sitting around the 200 mark at AEW. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was good, but like, I was a bit confused by, it just seemed like there was a lot going on, and I just wonder if this might not have been a little overbooked if your point was to go to Bucks and FTR. To have a huge 4-way with these guys, I understand, again, like I said earlier, you've got 2 hours, you want to get X amount of people on the show, you want to, be able to showcase people. But I guess if the point was to go to Bucks and FTR, which they're doing, I don't know. I guess I feel like we could have gotten there a little bit more simply. And that story kind of told itself when FTR came into the company. I didn't think they needed a match like this or any of that random team draw like we talked about last week. I didn't think they need that to go to Bucks and FTR. They could have told a better story if this had just been weeks of Bucks versus FTR build.
Well, I don't think the story is going to end at Full Gear. I think this is the first chapter, and then the build that you're speaking of is going to be for their next match. Okay. Because after this match, we have FTR comes down to the ring and face off with the Young Bucks. A masked man comes in, attacks Matt Jackson from behind with a steel chair, and then FTR give Nick a spike pile driver while the masked man did. And of course it is later shown to be Tully, who moved a lot better than I thought he was. Like, it took me a second, like, I'm like, who's this guy? And then I realized I could see through the mesh in the hat that he was wearing. I'm like, oh, that's Tully's hair. So I figured it out before they revealed, but like, he was moving like he was not Tully. But then they Pillmanize Matt's leg. So this could be how the Bucks end up losing to FTR, and then Bucks go on a little bit of a journey here after their loss to FTR, and then we get the build to the second match with a like a rejuvenated Young Bucks going into that match. I think that's why they're heading down this weird route of Bucks kind of turning basically a heel-ish or being very no, we don't care about anything, we're just gonna destroy everything that's in front of us type of mentality. And I think this is what it's building to. They're going to lose to FTR at Full Gear, and then we're going to get Young Bucks going through a little bit of a journey for the next 6 months maybe even 9, and they'll meet up with FTR again at either All Out or at Double or Nothing. I think that's where we're going to be heading with the Young Bucks FTR storyline. So this is just the first part of the story, and then this is going to be like the we always thought everything else leading up to this was the catalyst, but the loss to FTR is going to be the true catalyst to the Young Bucks FTR story.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can absolutely get on board with that. And to AEW's credit, they have earned my trust, like, at this point. Like, they've done enough good and not a lot of awful that I'll go with them on their journey. You know what I mean? Like, I don't go into storylines with them thinking like, oh man, how's that going to end up? Like, I bet this is headed toward a double count out, you know? So like, they have my trust. They don't make matches where there's someone who's not going to get pinned, right? So like, I appreciate that about them, and whatever they want to do, it's just different than I expected, but I will follow along. And I think that this is going to be one of those stories that maybe is not quite as long term as like a Hangman Kenny kind of thing, but this is a nice 6-month story, like you said. And I think that this is headed that direction. I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, I mean, this could end up being a long story as well, because Hangman's been running since November of last year, so we're coming up to a year. And if Bucks reface FTR at Double or Nothing, then it will be a year-long story. If it's at All Out, it's going to be like a 1.25-year long story. So we'll see how. I think this is going to be a slow burn story where they're going to kind of have the catalyst coming up with their loss to FTR, and then they're going to have to kind of find themselves and regroup and rejuvenate themselves to get to them again. Just quickly covering as far as ratings go, AEW was actually down 75,000 viewers from last week. NXT was actually down a little bit as well. I don't think there was massive competition outside of wrestling, so the overall audience was down from last week. They still drew a 0.30 rating. AEW did, at least, landing 13th, and NXT landed not on the chart and later came out as 6th on cable.
I think after November 4th, we're going to see a little bit more of an uptick back in these audiences. Obviously, for
everybody's watching the news.
Everyone's watching the news. Big, bombshell this, bombshell that, election this, election that. So I think that, give it another month, and especially once we're into, December, January, I think we're going to see a nice, healthy little uptick in some of these ratings.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up this evening?
Absolutely. I've got a couple things I want to talk about. I've been keeping a little post-it note here. So I want to address just a couple of things. One, I know I argued during the roundtable that AEW needs Jim Ross, and I agree with myself that they still need Jim Ross. I think he lends credibility, sells a big match, but he was more noticeable this week to me. I noticed him flubbing up some stuff, and it got on my nerves a little bit. From the very opening, they were talking about the dinner debonair, and I know that that's a alliteration, but he was like the dinner, the dinner. And I think Excalibur had to be like lay dinner.
I thought that was actually kind of endearing.
Okay, I don't know. Like there were just a few moments through the match or through the night, through the whole show, in a couple hours, where I started to notice a little bit more. I was like, all right, JR is starting to get a little bit older, and maybe just he's not as familiar. Like he comes from from WWE, like he knows that stuff like the back of his hand. He can go in there and use their terms and do what they want him to say and do it really, really well. Like for sure. Like I still think he's great in AEW. It just kind of made me think like, oh, maybe he's losing his edge a little bit. Not that, one night can make or break that for JR. JR has earned so much good grace that it does not matter. But I started to notice a little bit more that I think I don't know if you've got an opinion on this, but I just started to notice.
I didn't even notice him in this episode. The only time I did is because it's my favorite trolling of him when he uses the she pronoun for Sonny Kiss. Which is always my favorite, because at this point he's just trolling because people went crazy when he did that, and Sonny Kiss is like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I use those pronouns, so.
Right. The other thing I wanted to mention was their COVID address. They actually addressed and said by name COVID-19 on the program when they said Joey Janela is out. That's awesome. When matches change on the fly, like we all live in this world, we live in this reality. They're still doing their best to be safe, to bring us entertainment during the pandemic, which again, good for them. They're opening at 10% capacity or whatever they feel is safe according to, guidelines. So why not say, hey, Joey came into contact with someone, he self-identified, self-reported, and basically said, hey, I don't think I should be on the show. I'm going to stay home. They said good, and they found someone to replace him. Like, instead of just saying, well, this match was made backstage, and now it's Sonny Kiss, and not saying a thing, I like the fact that they addressed that. I like their response.
Yeah, they have always been very open about that. Ever since the pandemic started, they haven't shied away of that this is going on. They live on this planet like the rest of us. It's not like it's a giant secret about what's going on. And then, of course, we have had incidences where things had to change. We had Moxley, Brian Cage had to get pushed back a week because of, Renee. They didn't say her name, but Renee tested positive, and obviously John Moxley lives with his wife. So obviously, and he's like, no, I'm not coming, and I'm going to stay with her while she's sick. And that's just how it's going to be. And they said that was the case. And then of course we also had Lance Archer, last month, he came in contact with, and did he have it?
I'm not sure if they confirmed that or not.
Yeah,
they said he came in contact.
But then we had some others confirm that they had people. We had QT Marshall, Anna Jay, and all of his students, all of QT Marshall's students. They all had to be off the show for, a month. So, of course, they all address those things, and they've been very open about what's been going on, and they don't shy away from, okay, we've had to move this match a week because of this. Not a huge deal. This match had to be postponed because of that. Or here, Joey Janela couldn't make it. He had to stay away because of, coming into contact with somebody. So here we have Sonny Kiss as the substitute coming in. I think that's all been fine. Luckily, they haven't had any huge issues where it comes to that, where nobody had to miss a massive match that couldn't be moved. Nobody's been pulled off of a pay-per-view or anything like that. So, the worst is pushing that Brian Cage Moxley match a week, which wasn't really a huge deal. So,
right. Yeah, I totally agree. And I noticed when they said, specifically that he self-identified as, coming into contact for COVID-19, told them, I'm not going to be on the show, and that was the right decision. So, I was just very impressed, again, that even on the air, they're just being very honest with you about what's going on. Because, like you said, we all live on this planet, and we understand what's going on. So I thought that was to their credit, let's say.
Yeah, they've actually been very good throughout this whole thing, especially where they had plenty of people, or they still do, have plenty of performers that are stuck outside of this country, and ones that have not been on the show because they have other health concerns, that it's like, okay, I can't come into contact with anybody because it's super bad for me if I get COVID, because either they're diabetic or something like that. They've stayed home, and to AEW's credit, they have still been paying all those people. So Jack Evans was stuck in Mexico for a very long time. He was getting paid. Angelico was in South Africa, where he lives. Again, same thing. He got paid the whole time. Pac is still getting paid, and he's stuck in the UK. We have all the Joshi wrestlers that are stuck in Japan because if they came over here, if they wanted to go home, they'd have to quarantine for 2 weeks in Japan before being able to go through to their homes and whatnot. So, to their credit, they haven't fired anybody. They let 2 people go. One of them was because of a disciplinary action anyways. I'm not sure specifically about B. I don't know why they let her go, but it might have even been a mutual thing anyway, since she was already working Stardom in Japan, so she probably didn't need the gig anyways. So, they've been good. They haven't fired anybody specifically to cut people. They've been really good about that and paying everybody who still hasn't been able to make it. So overall, their response has been significantly better than others.
Yeah, I totally agree. Last thing I want to mention, and this is totally a conspiracy theory. Did you notice the Frost single earring on Matt's ear?
Yes.
Making me think of Shawn Michaels. Total conspiracy theory here. Do you think this is leading toward a Young Bucks breakup? Is Matt going to super kick Nick through a barbershop window?
No. I don't think so.
It's just when I saw it, I was just like, Shawn Michaels Rockers flashbacks.
I think it's just an overall attitude change of them together, because they've both been doing the heel stuff. There has not been any discontent between the two of them.
Right.
So
I totally agree. When I saw it, I was just like, oh, barbershop window.
Yeah, it was very much. I still haven't watched this week's Being the Elite, and I was told that the earring comes into play on this week's Being the Elite. I don't know if you've watched it.
I did watch it. I don't think it's like a big.
It was not a big thing.
Okay. But it's noticeable.
Okay. All right. So is that it for you?
That's it for me. Sorry, I went on a tangent.
Hey, it's all right. Hey, we made it to the 100-minute mark, so a little shy of your 90-minute cutoff. So hopefully we're not too late for you. No. Thanks everybody for tuning in, watching, and listening to That's Wrestling. If you're listening to the podcast, we do this show live over on YouTube, so you can follow the link to the channel in the show notes. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you can grab this as a podcast on all your favorite podcast apps. I've seen 60 plus apps come through the statistics, so we're on a lot of them at this point. Head over to iTunes, give us a review. It really helps out with the search results, because the vast majority of feeds pull off of iTunes for the most part. And if you have comments, questions, feedback, all that good stuff, discussion topics that you want us to bring up, send those to eric@thatswrestling.com, and we will read those and take your questions and all that fun stuff. And there's also a Discord you can join. Link is in the show notes and the description as well. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. For Caleb Johnson, my name is Eric LaRoche, and you've been watching and listening to That's Wrestling. See you later, guys.